You've probably heard of Claude Cowork, but do you know what it is, how it works, and how it compares to something like Claude Code or just the general Claude chat? Well, if not, watch this video because I'm going to go over all of that and I'm going to give you an in-depth guide and tutorial that covers everything you need to know about Codework and how you can use it more effectively. So with that said, let's dive in. Okay, so I'm on my computer now and I've got Claude Cowork opened up. Now the first thing you need to understand is how to actually use this. Well, in order for Codework to work, you need to download the Claude desktop app onto your computer. So go to the Claude website, simply download it. It's available for Mac and for Windows. Now, in order to use Claude Cowork, you do need to have a paid Claude subscription. So either I believe the $20 per month one, which is the Pro plan, or the $100 or $200 per month plan, which is the Claude Max plan. In case you're curious, I'm using the Max plan right now, in case there's some features on here that I have that you don't have access to. Now, as well as that, Claude Cowork only works when your computer is on. So while it is capable of running scheduled tasks and interacting with your files and doing something like web browsing, your laptop or machine or wherever you're running it on has to be on, the Claude desktop app has to be open, and that's how it's going to be able to execute. So unlike something like OpenClaw, if you're running on a virtual private server, it's not going to automatically run in the background. You would need to open it up and just leave the desktop application running. Now, I believe the last thing to mention here is that you can actually use Claude Cowork from mobile if you're on the Pro or the Max plan. So if your computer is open and then you go on your phone, you can trigger Claude Cowork to do something so long as the machine is running. And I believe that's done now through this dispatch feature that they added quite recently. I believe it was a few days ago from the time that I'm filming this video. Okay, so with that in mind, let's start talking about how to use Codework. Now you'll notice when you download the Claude desktop app and sign into your account and open it up, that you'll have three tabs at the top here. You'll have Chat, Codework, and Code, again, if you're on one of those paid plans. Now, of course, in order to use Codework, you're going to press on the Codework tab, and then you should be brought to a page that looks like this. You also can create a new task by just pressing this button up here. And on the left-hand side, you'll see all kinds of things like searching for different tasks, scheduled tasks, ideas, customize where you can add skills, MCP servers, things like that. And then you'll see various projects and all of the recent conversations that you'll had. Now to start using this, what you can do is select the model. So in my case, I'm with Opus 4.6, but typically if you want this to be cheaper, then run with Sonnet 4.6. You don't rip through your usage extremely fast, because it is worth noting that Claude Cowork uses significantly more usage than something just like the default chat, because it is doing a lot more operations and interacting with your machine. You also can select a folder to work in, and I'm going to talk in depth about how that works because the permission system behind Claude Cowork is a little bit confusing, and I really want to demystify that for you. Anyways, if we wanted to ask this to do something really basic, you can see that on my desktop, it's a little bit messy, right? We have a bunch of different folders. So one of the capabilities of Claude Cowork is that it can actually interact with your computer, and it can, for example, browse the web. It can organize your file system. It can go and find something for you, and it can use your physical computer. Now that's the main differentiator between something like chat, where in chat, it doesn't have access to your whole file system, right? It can't go through and reorganize your downloads. It can't directly access your browser unless you give it access to that explicitly. And it's a lot more limited, where typically what it's going to be doing is giving you a chat-based response, maybe generating something for you, or interacting with the tools that you connect it to. Codework has a lot of features that make it more useful because it can actually interact with the machine, and it can kind of take control of almost like your keyboard and mouse and do something as if it was you on your home computer. Again, there's some granularity there, which we'll get into. And then Code, because I think it's important to understand the difference, to be honest, can pretty much do everything that Claude Cowork can do. The real difference between Codework and Code is who it's designed to be used by. Codework is really designed for those of you that are a little bit more beginner, that aren't familiar with kind of development tools and working in the command line, and it's meant to be an easier kind of transition into using this like powerful tool. Whereas Claude Code, because typically you are going to run it in the command line, while also you can run it in the UI here, is a little bit more for advanced users or power users, but to be honest, they can pretty much do the exact same thing. Think of it, if I'm going to ask Codework to reorganize my files, the way it's going to do that is by running commands. Code can already do that and has already been able to do that for a long time, but it's just been a little bit more intimidating for other people. Now, a few other differences is that Claude Cowork will actually automatically create a virtual machine for you where it will run certain operations, and it just has some kind of default config and setup that Code doesn't have. So ultimately, they are pretty similar, but anyways, let me get into exactly how this works. So for now, just to demonstrate the basic capabilities of this, what I'm going to do is select a project that I want Claude Cowork to have access to. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my desktop here, and I'm just going to go with allow. Now notice that prompt right there, because Cowork will only be able to touch something on your computer that you give it direct access to. So now, because I've given it access to my desktop folder, anything in my desktop or any nested folders within that, Claude Cowork can modify, move, touch, delete, all of that kind of stuff. So be super careful when you use this, because you cannot just reverse anything that it did. So now that we're on my desktop though, we can run a simple task. Hey, Cowork, can you please reorganize my desktop and just color code the folders and make it a little bit cleaner and easier for me to read and find the information. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead here and just press enter and just see what it's capable of doing. And while it's doing that, we can quickly run through the other features you'll see here. Notice that you get kind of a progress bar at the top where it shows you what it's running through. In this case, it hasn't created like a long plan yet because it's still analyzing what I have. You also get the project you're working inside of, which is my desktop, as well as any instructions. In this case, I haven't specified any. And then you'll have the context that it's using. So if you're adding other files or tools or connectors, you'll see them here. So let's wait for this to finish and then I'll be right back. And as I mentioned, you can change the model down here if you want. Opus is going to use a lot of credits, so keep that in mind. Now, while we wait for Codework to finish here, this is a great time to tell you about today's sponsor, Storyblocks. Now, when I'm producing videos for this channel, the last thing that I want to be doing is jumping between 5 different sites, hunting for B-roll, background music, sound effects, etc. Storyblocks just fixes that. It's an all-in-one creative toolkit with footage, music, sound effects, templates, all in one place, and they actually save members an average of 3.5 hours a week, and honestly, that tracks for myself and my team. And what I also want to be clear about, and I think this matters, is that the library is 100% human-made. So real filmmakers, real artists from around the world. This is not some random AI-generated footage platform. The footage is professionally shot and produced, which is why it actually looks good in videos and doesn't feel generic. Now, on top of that, they do have AI-powered tools built in to speed up your workflow. So AI video editing powered by Runway and AI voiceover powered by 11 Labs. But those are just tools that work on top of the real footage. They're not replacements, so you stay in full control of the creative. Now, they've also got thousands of templates for Premiere Pro, After Effects, and DaVinci Resolve, which are easy to drop in and easy to customize. To start telling better stories with the tools that I use, head to storyblocks.com/techwithtim, and they're offering 15% off any annual plan for a limited time, and that discount is only available through my link below. Thanks to Storyblocks, now let's get back into it. Okay, so now what Claude is doing is it's just asking me what I want to do with some of the folders that I've got here. So I'm just going to say leave them where they are. It says the color coding. Let's go by category type. And now that I've answered those questions, it should continue and complete the rest. Okay, so it says it's finished. So let's go to the desktop and see. And I mean, that looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it really organized a lot of the files that I have, but at least it color coded them, which is kind of better than what I had before. And well, we're off to a good start using Claude Cowork. Okay, so let's continue now and let's have a look at some more advanced things that we can do and understand how Cowork actually operates. Now, the first thing that you need to understand is that the Cowork sessions that you have are independent and Claude doesn't automatically remember them. What that means is that if I were to create a new task here and I said, what did I just ask you to do? And I didn't work inside of the desktop again, so let's just remove that and just go, what did I ask you to do? You'll see that if I hit enter here, it's probably not going to know. So let's give it a second here to give us a response. And you can see that this is the start of our conversation and it doesn't know what we were doing in the other sessions. So this is different than when you're using the chat window where it can actually pull context from other sessions and automatically remembers things about you. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is that you can fix that problem by working inside of a project. So if you know that you're not just doing a one-off task and that you're going to want to do something multiple times, or you want Claude to remember some specific tasks about the thing that you're asking it to do, then what you're going to want to do is create a new project. So you can press the plus button here where it says projects, or if you go back to new task, you can go here and you can make a new project. So you see I have one called Hello World, but let's make a new one and just go start from scratch. And let's just go main or something, okay? And we'll go ahead and press on create. So now that I'm inside of this project, you'll notice that we actually have memory that appears in the right-hand side as an additional view, an additional tab. So now as we start chatting with Claude, even if the conversation gets really large, it's still going to remember what we were asking it to do previously, so we have all of the context in one session. This is probably the #1 thing you can do to make sure you get a better result, just work inside of a project. So from here, inside of the project, same thing, we can start interacting with Claude, but where this gets super useful is when we start giving it the ability to actually use our browser. So if we go down to the settings here, which we'll be able to access by clicking on our avatar, we can go to settings. So from settings here, if we click into this, there's a few things that we want to look at. Now, first, if we go to the Cowork settings here, we can enable dispatch. This is how you can use it from your phone. So if you go on mobile and you're just on the Claude desktop app on mobile, you can press dispatch and you can dispatch a task to your computer so it can start running. You also can enable global instructions. Now, these are things that you want to follow in all Cowork sessions. So for example, if you wanted to use, Microsoft Edge instead of using Chrome, you could tell it that and then it would do that by default. Or actually, that probably doesn't make sense because I think it connects to a Chrome browser extension, which we'll look at in a second. But if you have some preference, you can put it here and then you can delete Cowork sessions as well. Okay, now next thing that we want to look at is Claude in Chrome. Now this is where it gets really powerful because Cowork can automatically actually start managing your browser and doing things inside of there. Now in order for this to work, you need to install the Claude Chrome extension. So if you just go Claude, it probably will show you in the desktop app, but if you go Claude Chrome extension, if I could type properly, you're gonna see we have Claude for Chrome here. Let's give this a second to load. And then what we can do is go add to Chrome, okay? And if we add that to Chrome, we can install the extension. I have it installed right now. Now, once it's installed, what you can do is just select it. So if you go to the extensions and press on Claude, you can start asking it to do something and it will just directly do that inside of your browser. But you don't have to actually tell it to do something from there. As long as you have it enabled and you have that extension configured, you should be able to pair it from here in Cowork. And then if you go back to one of your tasks, you can say something like, open up my browser, go to YouTube, and tell me 2 of the recommended videos on my home screen. And now if we do that, we can go ahead here, we can go to connectors, make sure that Claude in Chrome is enabled. By default, it should be. And if I press enter here, it should start going and doing that. So I'm just gonna open up my browser just so we can kind of watch it work. And let's see if it opens up YouTube and starts triggering that. Okay, so you can see that it actually just opened another tab here. Let me open this up and you can kind of hide or view what it's doing. So you can see that it's opened up YouTube here and now there's a few videos on my screen, okay? And let's wait a second and see if we get the result, and we get it right away. And it says, I stayed in the worst room at luxury hotels. I tested the most viral TikTok, whatever, kitchen gadgets, you get the idea. Now, if we want this to go a step further, I can say, okay, click into both of those videos and give me all of the stats on them. So what's the views, what are the likes, and what's the sentiment of the first 10 or 20 comments on those page? I want to see why maybe those are being recommended to me and what the general information is. Okay. So now it's going to go ahead and do that. And same thing, we can watch it and it should actually click through these different, videos that we have here, and it can actually interact with the page. Okay, so you can see that it's opened this up. I'm just going to mute this here so you don't get the audio, but it just opened that up and then it's opening another browser tab here. Same thing, I'm just going to mute this and you can see Claude is active in this tab group and it's kind of analyzing the content. Now let's go back here and let's wait for the result. Okay, so it just wrapped up here. When I was watching it, it was scrolling through the page, clicking into different stuff, etc. And you can see that we get all of the stats here in terms of the engagement, the likes, the comments, the general sentiment, and that's super cool. Okay, now going to YouTube and finding some information is kind of like a novel example, but where this gets more useful is when you want it to actually execute some kind of task or workflow for you repetitively. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna actually ask this to search for flights, and I'm gonna wrap this into a skill. I'll talk to you about what that is in a second, and then show it as a scheduled task as well, so I can show you how we can kind of go to the extremes of what Claude Cowork can do. So I'm gonna say, hey, I want you to search Google Flights and find any direct flights or one-stop flights from Miami to Dubai in the next 6 months in business class that are less than $3,000 US. What I'd like you to do is give me a quick report of all of the flights that are available and recommend the top 1 or 2 options that are happening right now. I'd like you to search multiple date ranges and give me a quick report. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell it to do this here. Go ahead and press enter, and let's watch the browser. I'm just curious what this is actually gonna do. Okay, now something interesting here that I should point out is that it's actually running this in parallel. So this is another feature that Claude Cowork has, is that it can actually dispatch tasks to multiple sub-agents. So a sub-agent is just another agent or kind of version of Claude that's running in the background. You can run multiple at the exact same time. So rather than waiting for one search to finish and the next and the next and the next, we could do 6, 20, 30 searches at the exact same time. So Claude will automatically do this for you, but you can also tell it directly, hey, run this in parallel if you want it to run faster. Now, of course, you use more credits, but generally it's actually gonna be the same because you're gonna have to do the same thing anyway, but it's just running it in parallel so you get it done faster. Now, anyways, what it's done here is it's actually started doing some web search, and we can see that it's searching on a ton of different pages, and we see all the results that it gets. So 17 different searches that I believe it was running in parallel. Now it says that it's not getting the most accurate stuff, so what it's going to do now is directly go to the browser to Google Flights and start searching. So let's see, we can have Miami to Dubai. Okay, you can see it's searching through here. It's looking for the various different options, and I believe it's going to start changing the dates. You can see it just changed that one right there. We've got an Emirates flight, $6,000, a little bit expensive for me. And you know, it'll keep kind of going through this process, opening up this, and like, I'm not touching this right now. My hands are off the keyboard. It is completely controlling my computer. And the interesting thing, and also what to be aware of, is that because it can control this, it can be signed into my account. So I could then tell it like, go book the flight. And if it was an Emirates flight, for example, where I have an account, it would just be able to do that. And it like could charge my credit card or something. So you have to be a little bit careful when you start getting it to do things in the browser, and you definitely want to watch what it's doing because it can sometimes go rogue and some crazy stuff can happen if you don't know what it is that is actually executing. All right, so I just finished here. It did take a second to go through everything. We can see that it was opening up, searching a bunch of different flights. We can also see all of the tool calls that it ran. So you can see what the page looks like, and it gives you kind of like a screenshot on the side of what it was doing. And then it gave us ultimately the final report. So that's kind of the browser use feature, which I think for most people is going to be the biggest unlock and reason to use Codework on your machine. Again, be very, very careful when using this because it does have access to the same essentially context and history that your Google browser has, which for a lot of you is like your entire life, including myself. So you want to be very, very careful. Now, where this starts to get a little bit more useful is when we start building in things like skills and various other connectors. So you'll see that if I press this plus button here and I go to skills, there's a few options here just in this version of Claude that I have where I have some different skills like connecting to a database, generating a profile for AWS, whatever. And then this skill creator, which I believe comes pre-built into Claude Code or Claude Cowork. Now, a skill is essentially just a markdown file and potentially references to scripts or other resources that allows Claude to repeatably do something. So this kind of run that I've done, right, where I want it to go and search for flights and, you know, find them and tell me if any are cheaper than $3,000, I may want to do this, you know, once every day, or I may want to do this whenever I tell it to do it. Now, I could just come and give it the same prompt again, right, or copy and paste the prompt, but it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to get the same result. So what's better is if we actually tell Claude Cowork to wrap what it just did into a skill, and we give it kind of a step-by-step process on what it is that we want it to do. So we can say, hey, I want you to go search for this. Here's the criteria. Put this into a skill. You can run the skill, test the skill, and slowly refine it. And as soon as Claude did what you actually wanted it to do, you tell it, hey, save that or update the skill, and then it will figure out how to repeatedly do that, put it into this skill, and the next time that you want to do this again, you just reference the skill, and then it will repeat that operation. Now, a skill is not 100%, bulletproof. It still can make mistakes or veer from what you want it to do. But whenever you have something that's very repeatable, a workflow, something that like could be documented that maybe you would hand to an employee and say like, here are steps 1 to 7, that's a really good criteria for telling Claude to turn it into a skill. So if you're like, hey, anytime I get a new email, I want you to determine if it's a receipt or an expense or if it's a payment, and then file it to Google Drive. Same thing, that would make a really good skill because it's something that you're gonna do a lot and that is pretty consistent and has the same process and the same steps. So in order to do that, you can simply just say, hey, turn this into a repeatable, reusable skill that I could run anytime I want to search for flights. Let's not lock it into Dubai to Miami. Let's have it be any 2 cities. And when I run the skill, you ask me for the 2 cities and for the date range, and then you search through Google Flights specifically, and you find the cheapest options and the best recommendations for me in whatever class I suggest. Again, this is not super robust. I'm just doing a random example with you. It makes more sense if you have like a repeatable workflow as opposed to searching for flights, but I just want to show you the skill component because it's super powerful. So let's see if it can create the skill now, and then we'll have a look at what the skill actually looks like and how we can use it. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, that took a long time. It was doing a bunch of testing, evaluation, all of these kind of things. And anyways, it eventually created the skill. Let's quickly have a look at it. So if I press this, we can see that the skill is really just a markdown file. So .md, it has all of this nice formatting and just explains step by step exactly what to do. Is designed to be read by Claude, right? So you can write it yourself, but generally describe what you want to do, test it, make sure it works, and then add it to the skills or get it to create the skill, and then iterate on the skill until you've got a really good one. And then those skills kind of build the foundation for a lot of the tasks that you want to run. So what I'm going to do is just press copy to my skills, wait for that to load, and you can see now if I press manage here, we can view all of the different skills, some examples, and then this flight search one has now been added. So now if I wanted to use the skill, let's go here. I can just directly add it, right? So I can go skills, make sure it is, I can press it, which just puts in /flight search, and then I can start asking it to do something and it will do the search. Now where this gets really useful is when we can actually start adding these to scheduled tasks. So you see if I go to scheduled here, I have one task. Let me just close this. It's a MCP server that I have here. Anyways, I have one task right now where what it does is it goes and it searches my emails and automatically files all of the receipts, expenses, etc. Super useful. It's paused right now, but what I will do is make a new task or a new scheduled task. And I'm going to say this is, flight search. Okay, you can describe what you want, and then you can put the skill in here as well. So you could say /flight search, right? So we're now going to reuse that skill and then put, hey, I want you to search for flights from Miami to Dubai, in the week of March, I don't know, 29th or something, and tell me any ones that are cheap. And then the frequency you can set weekly, daily, hourly, etc., and then toggle any other options like this, with what model you want to use and the folder or project you want it to work in. Now, because I'm super lazy, I'm just going to tell it to add this for me. Hey, add a scheduled task where we look for flights from Dubai to Miami for under $4,000 US anytime in the next 9 months. And then I'm going to say, run this every day at 10 a.m. Dubai time. Okay, and go ahead and press enter, and now it should just automatically create this for us. This is similar to like a cron job, if you've seen that before, inside of something like OpenClaw. But point is, a lot of this stuff, you don't have to manually do it, just tell Claude to do it, and it will just utilize the feature that already exists. And you can see, okay, it's gonna use this skill schedule, which is built into Claude, and should give us a result here. And if we go to scheduled, okay, it's not here yet, but hopefully it will come in 1 second. Okay, so it's now popped this up. I just have to press the button schedule. So I'll go ahead and do that. And if we now go to scheduled, we can see that it's here every day at 2:04 a.m. because it's time zone adjusted to where I am right now. And you can see that it has the skill and what it is that it needs to do. Perfect. Okay, so there we go. We get the description, and then I can test this by running it right now. And you can see, like, here's an example of my other one running, and I can just turn it back on so that it's going to trigger. Now, important thing with the scheduled task, again, Claude Code has to be open and your computer has to be on. If it's not, then it is not going to run. So obviously that's not going to work well. Okay, so those are skills, super useful. Make sure you build them, and that's really how you start building some customization and some capabilities inside of Claude, not just for Cowork, but for the code and chat. And you can also add them to particular workspaces so that they're only loaded in when you load a specific project, if you want it for, like, all of the people on your team for a coding project or something like that. Now, I think the last thing that we can quickly go over is just the idea of connectors and kind of additional functionality. So if you go to customize and you go to connectors, where Claude, for me particularly, gets a lot more useful is when you start adding external capabilities. So you can see, like, I've added Notion, I've added Google Drive, I've added Calendar, I've added Gmail, I've added GitHub. And while if you use Cowork, it can go to your browser and just use these things anyways, it's a lot more efficient and a lot faster if you connect these pre-built connectors. Now, these connectors, you can browse them. There's a ton built in directly to Claude or from this store here, but it allows Cowork, or really any Claude feature that you're using, to call a tool that goes to this external service and does something. So I tell it, read my email. It doesn't have to actually open my browser and go to Gmail. It will use the Gmail connector, which is typically safer, more secure, and faster, and just much more efficient. So if you're going to be running a lot of these workflows, I highly recommend connecting to the connectors and just set up, spend 30 minutes, set up your Claude, connect to all the data sources that you want, and then go through here and provide the particular permissions. Like in my case, I don't want it to be able to write or delete something, so I blocked that tool. But for everything else that's read-only, I've allowed that. So this gives you a little bit more control than relying on it to use the browser. And remember that if you don't want it to use this, right, what you can do is you can block, for example, the browser extension, or only add specific websites so that it doesn't go rogue and do something that you don't want. So anyways, guys, that is going to wrap up this video. That is I guess, relatively in-depth Claude Cowork tutorial. If you want to see more videos like this, definitely let me know. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one.